Good morning. This is Joyce Bernard, and I am Pauline Graivier with the Dallas Jewish Historical Society, and the date is July 7th, 2014, and we're just through the long holiday weekend. So, good morning, Joyce.
Good morning.
Tell me, we were just talking earlier, and I know that you moved to Dallas when you were 2.5 years old. Now, where did you come from, and why do you know why your parents decided to come here?
I moved, I don't know the year that I moved here, but I have been here most of my life. I was born in Bayonne, New Jersey, as was my mother. My daddy was born in Jersey City, and he was a manufacturer's rep for children's clothing, little girls' dresses. And he decided that this was a good opportunity to move down here and start a new life, I guess, for all of, for the family. So.
Did you have siblings?
Yes, I have a brother that's 6 years older than I, and he lives here in Garland.
Did anybody follow your father into that business?
Actually, after my husband had suffered a stroke, my son stepped in to the business, so as a rep.
So your father was a rep?
Yeah, Daddy was a rep first.
And then your husband?
Yeah, well, later on after some time after we met and so forth.
Okay, so do you remember anything about your parents and how they met and why? You don't know why they came, but...
Well, as I say, I think Daddy came because he wanted to make a better life for us,
Sure.
And it was such a rat race back east, I'm sure, which it still is today. I don't know. He just wanted a better life for us, I suppose.
Okay. And when you came here, you were living where you went. Tell me where you went to grade school again.
It was Ben Milam Grade School.
That's in East Dallas. And then Spence Junior High.
And then Spence Junior High, and then North Dallas up until my senior year.
And then what happened?
And then we moved over here to Park Lane, and I went to Hillcrest, which where I graduated from in 55.
55.
And went to Oklahoma University for 2.5 years after that, where I met my husband. He had just served 4 years in the Navy and decided to go back to school after the Navy and get a degree in medicine. So that's how we met.
And you said he did not. He became a...
Well, he didn't finish, I guess for a number of reasons. But he decided he wanted to be a salesman, which he was very, very good at, and he loved it. He loved the traveling and so forth. And that's how he made a good living.
And what did he rep? What kind of...
children's clothing, children's dresses.
Oh, he went and followed your father.
And swimwear. There was a time he took a line on, a swimwear line too.
And you said that later on he suffered a stroke.
Right. Oh, that was sometime later. Quite a while later.
Much later.
Yeah, he's been deceased for 14 years.
And you said your son took over.
Well, he was going to step in anyway after he graduated from Texas Tech. And he did, and he's been quite successful too. Not with the same companies, but he is also a traveling salesman and also enjoys it. So that's what counts, liking what he's doing. So
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's a little rare in these days to find people who travel in sales.
I know. Unfortunately, there are a lot of mom and pop stores have gone by the wayside due to the economy and so on and so forth. So, which is sad, but that's the way it is.
I think one day we'll see a trend of coming back.
Maybe.
One sort of hopes. You are. Tell me, how did you become so active in the Jewish community? I know you are.
Well, I don't know. I guess being a hyper person and not wanting to sit still very long, I like to involve myself. And being that I have 2 children, a son and a daughter, but being that I don't have grandchildren, one of the loves I like so much about the J is that I'm a surrogate bubby during the fall. I love that. Love the kids, and they love me. And it fills that need to.
What kind of work do you do? Tell me, volunteer work.
Well, I'm also on the board here. I volunteer here. I've helped in the auditorium, setting up for lunches. I've done that sort of a volunteer. When there's, again, if there's a board meeting, I'm at the board meeting. That's about the only volunteering, per se, that I do here at the J. So I don't want to like to cut myself too thin.
Well,
with volunteering.
Interact. You say the kids love you. How do the kids? Why do the kids love you? What do you
I'm
do?
like a typical bubby, I guess. I sit on the floor with them. I play games with them. I read to them. I hug them. If somebody's crying, I wipe their tears.
So you go into the rooms for the preschool.
Definitely.
Is that on a continual basis?
I hope so. Of course, they break for summer.
Mm-hmm.
So,
what's a typical day for you?
Well, right now, very, very quiet because the kids, as I say, they're away.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I come to the J, I have lunch, or again, there may be a meeting of some sort. I also belong to the couples club here. I used to be secretary here for the couples club,
mm-hmm. which
I did for 2 years. And then somebody else stepped up and wanted to be secretary. I said, fine, that's fine by me. And so I pretty much involve myself here when I can.
Now, someone told me that you are also active in taking care of some of the older members of the J.
Well, not on a steady basis, but I have done that. I have a friend that I drive for now. I'm the designated driver. Oh, one other thing I forgot to mention. I've been in plays here at the J. And that was fun. A lot of fun. And I hope that will continue.
Tell me about that.
Well, I was in the Sound of Music. I was a nun in the Sound of Music. If you can imagine a Jewish nun,
yes.
Which I thought was pretty cute, pretty funny. But I enjoyed that. And so I've been in a couple plays here, which I really enjoy that. I guess that's the ham in me.
Well, I think that's, of course, I think that's so much fun.
It is fun. It's a lot of fun.
I agree. And it brings you closer to a lot of people.
Yes, it does. It does.
So what do you see an announcement?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
One other thing that comes to mind. I am in the chorus here at the J. And as a member of that, we practice here once a week. And then we go to the various senior living residences and sing for them, which they love. So, but we practice here every Wednesday. In fact, we just sang here last week for the group here.
That's
and they love
terrific.
People love that. The older people. Everybody loves music, or most everybody loves music. That's something
opens
that we
a lot
can.
Of doors, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It really does. And one thing I find, not only is the J wonderful for camaraderie, but there's so many wonderful activities here. Things to do if you want to.
If you want to.
Right.
Do you exercise? Do you go to the pool?
I used to. I'm ashamed to admit I haven't been exercising for 2 years, a couple of years, which I need to do. But I'm as active as I can be. Thank God I can be active, so.
I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
You obviously look really good and healthy. And
well, I am now. Thank God I am. I'm very thankful that I am healthy because I know so many people who are not.
Now,
what else was I going to say? I was going to say something else about the J. What more can I say? I think the J is wonderful. I really do. They're not paying me to say that either.
have you seen a lot of changes in it?
Oh yeah, for the better. And I've made a lot. There are a lot of acquaintances I've made here, and I hope to continue to do that, as well as friends, of course. It's a good place for seniors.
So when you walk in the door, you feel like you're at home.
Oh, absolutely.
And we'll go anywhere.
No, and I think that people have to make an effort too, also. for that. And I've always been a people person, I guess because my parents, were salesmen, and they were always, with the public, dealing with the public. I was in retail for many, many years. My husband, as I said, was a rep. I had a business at one time in Richardson for 7 years.
Tell me about
A
it.
sample shop. Being that my husband was in the business and I knew a lot of the reps up at the apparel mart, I had access to a lot of samples. So I had a children's shop.
And where was that?
That was in Richardson, and I was there in the 70s. And I really enjoyed that.
So
I learned a lot from that.
in the 70s.
Mhm.
So, and for 7 years.
Yes.
Why did you? I can understand why you went in. Why
Right.
did you go out?
Well, business started getting bad.
So it wasn't fun anymore.
No, the economy started, sliding downward. Excuse me. And it affected my business, of course. So I didn't see any point in staying in business if there weren't people coming in to buy for their children or grandchildren, as it were. So I left there, not necessarily in this order, but I worked for a jewelry concern here in Dallas called Accessory Ladies, they are no longer in business. And I loved that, all kinds of accessory, jewelry, medium to more expensive jewelry, handbags, scarves, anything to do with accessories, of course. I did that for 5 years. Then I stopped doing that. I worked at Neiman's for 2.5 years. And from Neiman's I went to Children's Collection 2, it was called, on Lover's Lane. I was there for 11 years and built up quite a clientele there, which I loved also.
And you gave that up because?
Well, because they closed,
Oh.
unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
And that's why I'm no longer working. Plus the fact, physically I'm okay, but however, I can't stand on my feet too long. My back begins to really bother me. So unfortunately that kind of kills the salesman in me. I can't do that anymore like I once did. But I like people. I'm a people person. I like to be around people most of the time. I like to be around the children, of course, like I said. And
What are some of the biggest challenges that you have faced in your life, and how have you dealt with them?
well, I would say the biggest challenge I faced was when my husband had a stroke. That was really tough, very tough on me.
It sounds like it was
Yeah.
a very debilitating.
It was, and more so on him, but more so than me, of course. But that was definitely a tough time in my life. But thank God I went through some tough times with that, but I had support, emotional support, moral support from his family as much as could be. They lived back east for a time, and then they moved to Florida. His parents moved to Florida, as did his sister and his brother. But anyway, that was very tough. But like most things, you learn from adversity. So, and fortunately, Marty lived for 16 years.
And
But it left him paralyzed on his right side, so he could no longer drive or work like he once did. And he was very young. I think Marty was like 64 when it happened. And strokes know no age, it can happen to anyone.
that is
So
true.
I would say that was definitely a difficult time in my life.
And so you became his major caregiver.
Of course. But I was also working at this children's shop I just mentioned. So
So
at a time. So when he was able to come home and do things for himself, which was quite a long time. I mean, he was in the hospital for several months. I mean, he was like a child. He couldn't walk, he couldn't talk, it was like starting all over again. So it was more of a challenge for him, in that regard. But after he could do for himself, so to speak, then he was able to get around.
and
So-
then you're going to work.
And I was working.
a relief in some
more or
way.
less. And then there was a time, at that same time, my mom was living with us. She was not able to care for herself anymore. She was not an issue. She was wonderful, never complained. And anyway, she was a terrific gal. I was very lucky. I had two wonderful parents, very fortunate, and a wonderful brother. And he has 3 kids that are wonderful, my nephews and my niece. So I'm very lucky. I really am.
This is very lucky.
Yes.
Very, very fortunate.
Mhm.
You have had some major challenges. 'Cause
Right.
he had to leave his work as well as not being able to do anything. He
Right.
left his work,
Right.
which is in itself a major challenge.
Of course. But, you get through these things and you learn, hopefully, through these things. So it made me a better person, I think.
Well, a stronger person.
A stronger
anyway.
person, that's right.
And you have children who also live in the North Texas area.
Yes. My son and his wife live in Las Colinas. My daughter and her husband live in Allen, Texas. Neither of them have children, unfortunately, and that's why I'm so deeply involved here with the kids that I love, and I enjoy that.
So
Again,
so these are the pre-kindergarten and the nursery
yes,
children.
yes, definitely.
And you
Up to 5 years.
And they just know that Miss Joyce is
Right.
going to come. What do they call you?
Bubby.
Bubby.
Bubby Joyce.
Oh. And the teachers know that you can come in at any time, or do you have a set schedule?
Well, I had a set schedule. I used to come one day a week for a couple of hours, sometimes just an hour, but whenever, And I would help them, like the kids had like snack time. I'd help the teachers set that up. And as I said before, I would read to them, which they loved. I'd play dress up with the little girls, and the boys. Boys I couldn't do as much with, but anyway, it's a joy. It's a joy. It fills my heart. It really does. I enjoy that a lot.
Do you have any suggestions for people who find themselves in the same kind of situation that you did? A young woman with a young husband, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
These days people live longer. For how to manage the kind of challenges you
Well,
have.
the thing I would strongly recommend first is to get involved in a support group. I tried that. Unfortunately, it didn't materialize, and I also involved myself when Marty first had his stroke and was going through therapy. I would go make it a point to go down there and go through the therapy with him. So, see what they did to help him progress. Of course, there were certain things I couldn't do. I wasn't a qualified person to do that.
Sure.
But like when he came home, I made sure that he would do certain exercises because there was times that I could bring him home before he was allowed to come home permanently. So I involved myself that way too.
It's extremely interesting. It sounds like you kept yourself so busy.
I did.
And you still keep yourself so busy.
Well, it keeps me young. And it keeps me, I think when you keep yourself involved, it keeps you physically fit. It gives you a reason to get up and do and involve yourself. And like I said, I've always been a people person. I like people. And I, that's just been my personality. I've always had friends, a lot of friends, because I am outgoing, if I may say so myself. And I make friends easily. If I meet a stranger, I think nothing of starting a conversation. And so.
Well, you sound like an extremely busy and a person who knows what she's good at and is doing it. You're not sitting around waiting for somebody to come to you.
No.
Which is good. Now, you said you had wonderful parents.
Yes.
Give me an example. And
Well, they both had a wonderful.
Anything about their background?
Well, they both had a wonderful personality.
Oh.
They taught me how to ballroom dance, and to this day, I love to dance when I can. Um, and they were very loving, very open people.
Did
very
your
loving.
mother work outside the home?
No. Well, she did for a time. When I was in school, she would help my daddy.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in college, as I say, I was only there 2.5 years, but she would travel with him on the road, and help set up at markets, because that's what he did. So.
Do you remember anything about your grandparents?
Not a
either?
thing. Unfortunately, I don't.
Unfortunately.
I sure don't. I'm sad to say. I know that the background, I was, on my mother's side, my grandmother was Hungarian, so I had that to, I'm sorry to say I never really, questioned mother about her background or anything.
Most of us don't. We don't think about it, you
Right.
know.
Which is sad. However, I must say, my mother was one of 5. She was the baby.
Mm-hmm.
My daddy was one of 10 children and had to quit school, I understand, and had to go to work. I don't know what he did.
And where
but he
was this?
Back east in New Jersey.
Oh, in New Jersey.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm jumping back and forth, I know.
I am
But-
too. So.
But my parents' mother, as I say, was was born in Bayonne, New Jersey, and Daddy was born in Jersey City.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they met through mutual friends on a blind date, as it were. So
How did you meet your husband? You said you
I
were
met
in
him
school
at
together.
school
Mm-hmm.
at Oklahoma University. He had just gotten out of the service, was going back to get a degree in medicine at that time. My roommate, it just so happened, was dating him. So, but we would see each other. He and I would meet each other or see each other at in one of the buildings, language buildings,
Uh-huh.
and our friendship progressed from there.
Yeah.
There was nothing serious, thank goodness, between my roommate and Marty, but that's how we met. And through Hillel, that association at school. And of course, the rest is history. So.
Well, it sounds like your Jewish connections all the way from college and then through your married life. It's been your Jewish connections that
yes.
have given you your social life and so on.
Right, and of course, my parents' associations with their friends and their friends' children.
Mm-hmm. Did you go to Sunday school?
Actually, yes, I did. As a matter of fact, I went to Sunday school, Temple Emmanuel, when it was in South Dallas.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know if you remember him or not, but Rabbi Lefkowitz, Oliver Shalom, was officiating at that time.
He married you?
No, he did not. He had passed away. But Rabbi Olin married my husband and I. Unfortunately, the sad thing here is my father never saw me married. He died of a heart attack 2 weeks before we got married. So, and I was told at that time, you do not cancel a Jewish wedding. The marriage goes on. So, but that was a very sad time for me.
Oh.
I was very close to my daddy. I was close to my mom as well. But the expression "daddy's girl"?
Yes.
I was the epitome of daddy's girl. So.
And that follows through even in adult life too, doesn't it?
I guess so. I guess so. But mother and I were also very close after a time. But yeah, that was a real tragedy. That was tough. That was very tough. That was heartbreaking.
Yes, but again, you come back to your Jewish roots
Oh yes,
to
definitely.
get you through.
Right.
So you've been there, Temple Emmanuel, through Rabbi Lefkowitz, Rabbi Olin, Rabbi Klein.
Yes.
Yes,
God
and
bless
then
him, too.
all of the rabbis there.
Right.
And you're still a member?
No, not any longer. Actually, fortunately I dropped out. I was one time I was a member at Temple Shalom because the kids were younger at that time. So I became a member at that time and involved myself there.
And that was Rabbi...
Who was rabbi then?
Okay,
Uh,
that's all
That
right.
would take some thought here.
I can see him in my mind's eye, but I just,
Not Paley, not the gentleman not the
No.
rabbi that's there now.
No.
Although he's a very sweet, very lovely man.
you've always stayed
Oh,
with
Besser, excuse me.
Besser.
Rabbi Besser.
Right.
Right.
Who
he
you
was-
knew at Temple Emmanuel first.
No, well, I don't know. I knew Besser at Shalom, but I didn't know him at Emmanuel.
Mm-hmm. He was the assistant rabbi
Oh,
there.
okay. Well, see, now then I didn't know.
Uh-huh.
See, I learned too. Learned something from you.
I don't know how important it is.
That's okay.
but,
He too was a really very sweet man.
so, there are very few people, there are many people who will go out and involve themselves, but
Yes.
you have been a consistent volunteer.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I think
I
that's,
consider that a compliment.
it is.
I consider that
A
a compliment.
dedicated volunteer
Yeah.
is a thing of great value. Boy,
Yes.
it's a precious jewel.
Yes, it is. Oh, I've left something out. Things come to mind, so you'll have to bear with me here. I was a member of National Council of Jewish Women for many years and made some very dear, close friends there.
Mm-hmm.
When we first moved here, I remember her being involved in Hadassah.
Mm-hmm.
Daddy wasn't particularly in any gentlemen's or men's organizations because he was so busy,
Yeah.
as a salesman.
Yeah.
He did belong to an organization for salesmen, but not outside of that,
Mm-hmm. So he could go to a meeting and be with his peers.
That's right.
And-
Yeah. In fact, at one time, I think he was president of what was the name? I think it was NAUCUS. It was a salesman's organization of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what advice do you have for, we've done pretty well, what kind of advice do you have for people who come into Dallas?
Well, I would definitely say involve yourself religiously, socially. Join like what you have here, the J, which is wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And getting, involved that way. And that in itself gets like an introduction to other people, other resources, organizations. I would highly recommend that. Get involved religiously and socially. Any way you can. Excuse me.
I'm just looking to see if I missed anything here. I'm trying to, there's, outside of the Jewish connections.
Yeah.
What were there any other interests? Did you go into the Dallas itself, and who would be the people who you'd like to have interacted with? Are there any people who you've read about, Dallas people who would have been a special pleasure for you?
Not necessarily, no. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head.
What are you most
For
proud
example.
of? I'm sorry, go on. For
No, I
example.
was just going to say, who were you thinking of somebody specific?
No, I mean, I think of Annette Strauss, who was
Yeah, I knew
Jewish.
of her,
Uh-huh,
but I never met her.
uh-huh.
What was I going to say to you? This you might find interesting. Mitchell Rosansky and I graduated from Hillcrest at the same time. We didn't say graduating class. He married a very sweet lady who happens to be a cousin of the gentleman that I've been seeing for the last 14 years.
Really?
So we're like mishpucha.
Yeah, that's...
And Mitchell was on the Dallas board there,
Yeah,
very much involved there. So,
that Rita...
Rita Rosansky.
Yeah, sure.
Laura Miller is also related to this person I've been seeing for 14 years.
Really?
So, yeah. So, it's a small world. That's all I can tell you.
It is.
And
And if you stay in the Dallas Jewish world, you can find a lot of interactions
Well, you know
like
something,
that.
regardless, I think we're all connected.
Now, what about your kids? Are they connected into the Jewish world?
I don't think as much as they once were, you know, for whatever reasons.
Is
So-
it because of where they live, do you think?
No, well, not so much that. Well, maybe that's a factor, logistically, maybe, in their choice. I mean, they had exposure to the Jewish religion. I was never that quote unquote religious. We did celebrate holidays, sometimes jointly with my brother and his family at that time. You know, during when the kids were younger. But as far as their affiliations, I don't believe Susan, my daughter, is more in tune to being involved in our religion than my son is. And that's, you know, that's their choice.
That's right.
You know, I'm not pushing anybody to do anything. So, and both their spouses are not Jewish. My son-in-law is not, and my daughter-in-law is not, which makes very little difference to me. I just want my kids being healthy and happy, as expression goes. And they seem to be. And that's all that matters.
Joyce,
Yeah.
what would you say you were the most proud of looking back at your life? And
I think my children, I'm proud of my children. That's my greatest, I don't know exactly how to put it, but that to me is an accomplishment, raising two children. It's
they
not
are.
easy raising two children, especially when you have a husband that's working. Of course, in those days, mother stayed home, which I think is very important, and raised the children. But there were a lot of times that he wasn't around for support, like the men are today.
Now, when he had his stroke, were there any kids still living at home?
No, thank God they were on their own. I mean, I had their emotional and moral support, of course, but neither of them were living at home.
Yeah, well, that also helps.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Whenever there's a tragedy, you always hopefully look to your family for support, and friends, which were also very supportive.
I think
So
your whole attitude is delightful.
Thank you.
And
Thank you. That's a key to success, having a good attitude. And I think I get that too from my mom. She was wonderful. She really was a wonderful lady. Terrific in every way.
It sure makes life happier, doesn't it?
It does. It does. It really does. So I'm very lucky I had wonderful parents. I have wonderful children. But I think my greatest accomplishment was my two children and being in business, which taught me a lot. And a lot about myself.
Very wise, and obviously a very successful life.
Well,
So,
thank you. So far, and I say health above everything. Health above everything.
Does
and
make
humor.
a difference.
Don't
And
forget a sense of humor.
a sense of humor.
Attitude and a sense of humor and good health, you can't beat it. Not necessarily in that order, but my parents had a wonderful sense of humor, really. My mom was terrific. My friends even remember her being quite funny.
What
you know.
was her name?
Ruth
Ruth
Werther.
Werther. Okay.
Ruth and Lou Werther.
And what about your husband? Did he have that kind of sense of humor?
He had a sense of humor, but not quite as gregarious
Yes.
as my
yes.
parents.
And your parents lived to how old?
Let me think. Mother would have been 90 had she lived. She's been gone 14 years. She would have been 90. And Daddy, unfortunately, died of a heart attack, like I said earlier. He was 58, 55. Yeah, he was very young. Very young. Yeah, that was not a happy time for any of us.
No. Well, but this is delightful, and we are going to put you up on
Oh,
the
gosh.
website, but when, I'm not
Make sure
quite
you get my good side.
Thank you, Joyce. This
Thank
has
you,
been a
too.
delight to
Thank you
interview.
very much for your time.